Okay. Today we're going to start on Tzadik Beis, Amud Aleph. It's about the middle of the page. It's Yibaylahu. They asked the question. We thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. It's first of all learning we should have the Beis Hamikdash. And we're learning Lili Nishmas. What's the yahrzeit is Chaya Goldebast of Zavakayan. It's Dr. Stein's mother. And Zava Goldebast Baruch Binyamin. And the son will have and for Shleim for whoever else needs for Shleim. Okay, today we learn Boilo. They had a question. Does worker when a worker is allowed to eat when he's doing work? See what we're holding? 92. When a worker is allowed to eat, is he working? Is he eating as part of his wages? In other words, there's like sometimes an employer will pay you less and they'll tell you, but there's benefits. There's benefits here. You work here, you get a discount on this, you get free membership to this place, you get insurance, you get to this. So is it considered part of the benefits that come along with his wages, the fact that he's able to eat? Or maybe no, it's not an arrangement of his wages. Just the Torah allows him to eat. It's a special thing that the Torah allows him to eat. It's nothing to do with his wages. No, the Gemara asks straight away, what's the practical difference if you consider it mishalai? That means part of his wages. It's like a bonus, or not. So it says the difference would be if he says that I'm not going to eat it, but I want my son and daughter, my wife and children to be able to eat it instead of me. We're not talking about if the custom is to feed them lunch. We're talking about specifically the eating that they do while they're working. If they're working with grapes, they're allowed to eat those grapes. It's not about lunch. Lunch was another custom, right? So, is he allowed to say, or is he able to say that I'm not going to eat, but I want to give that rights to my wife and children that they should be able to come in here and eat while I'm working? If it's a bonus, his bonus that he gets as part of his wages, then Yavinalu. Then he doesn't want the bonus, he can transfer it to them. You get membership to, because you work here, you get membership to a certain library or something. You say, can I pass it on to someone else? I say, yeah, okay.
Could you say that did you raise my wages and I and my family won't eat any of them?
That's coming up. Jonathan mentioned that he can also say that he can stipulate that I don't want to take that benefit and I want to get a higher salary.
Is it going to discuss if the worker doesn't eat, that he'll be able to produce less?
No, it's not necessarily so, because this is not lunch. So this is just snacking while he's working. Yeah. So, but if we say that it's something that the Torah allows him to eat from heaven, the Torah only allows him to eat. It doesn't allow his wife and children to come in and eat. Very interesting question. What's the Allah? So, Tashma. Come and listen. It says in our Mishnah, we learned in the Mishnah that we learned last night, we learned that a worker is allowed to even eat more than what his labor is worth. It says if that's the case, you can eat cucumbers even such an expensive price, and dates even such an expensive price as a dinar. If we say that it's a bonus that he gets from his wages, it's an extra bonus. So oiger bedanka oichel bezuzah. Is the bonus going to be more than what his salary is? Get more. There are certain jobs that are like that. You get everything is the benefits. But the Gemara is surprised about this. So what do you want to say? Okay, so I get the question. Sorry, there should be a limit, right? So let's try it the other way. That maybe it's not something that's part of a bonus on his wages. It's just the Torah gives this special allowance that he's allowed to eat. So if that's the case, so safe safe. But nevertheless, it's so much that the value of his work is a certain price, and he's allowed to eat so much. So we have the question whether we go this way or we go that way. So what do you want to say? If it's mishamayim, no, you can't ask a question why the Torah allows it. The Torah allows it. It's a special allowance that the Torah gives. He's allowed to eat. If that's the case, also the Torah says that he gets a bonus. It's not. We understand that this is a mitzvah. But so the Torah says that he gets such a bonus. It doesn't matter if it gives it as a bonus to the wages or it gives it as a bonus from that it goes just an allowance.
It's supposed to be a snack. It's a
Yeah.
snack until you should not be eating
Right. Right. So that's a question on the Mishnah. Why is it allowed to eat so much? Right. Okay. Tashema, come and listen. Rabbi Lozer Chisma, we spoke about Rabbi Lozer Chisma yesterday. Rabbi Lozer Chisma says that a person is not allowed to eat more than his wages. He says, that a worker, a laborer is not allowed to eat more than his wages. The Chachamim say that he is allowed. What's going to be the machlekes Rabbi Lozer Chisma and the Chachamim? Go like this. The Marsav, Rabbi Lozer Chisma would hold that it's his own. It's a bonus that he gets on his wages. It's considered something that's an arrangement between him and his boss. That like he gives him a salary, he also gets these special benefits. Mar Savar, but the Chacham would say Mishal Shemaim Oichel. That's why he's allowed to eat even more. It's something coming from heaven. So he's allowed to eat even more than his wages. Gemara says Loi, not necessarily is that the machlekes. The Kuli Alma, really, we could learn it differently. We could say that everyone holds Mishaloi Oichel, that what he's eating is a bonus on his salary. And over here, what's the machlekes? If he's allowed to eat more than his wages, that's b'kenafshecha k'miflgi. In the verse it says that you eat kenafshecha as he like himself or like his desire. Mar savar kenafshecha b'davar shemais nafshalov. The Rabbi Lozer Chisma holds that what does kenafshecha mean? That it's because of the risk that goes into labor that the Torah allows us. Since every laborer has to risk his life by climbing on ladders, by maybe he'll get bit by this or this, whatever. Or any type of work has some risk involved. So because there's a risk involved, the Torah gave him this.
No workers' comp.
Right.
It says in
This is the workers' comp. He gets to eat. So okay. And Marsav, the Chachamim hold that there are certain situations where you're allowed to make up with the worker that he's not going to eat. Certain times, just like you yourself don't have to eat, so you're allowed to refrain from eating while you're doing work. So too, you're certain situations where you're allowed to stop that as well. Now, all we did now is we switched the machlekes from being, is it coming as a bonus, to is it something directly allowance from the Torah, to some other machlekes. I'm sorry.
It's a privilege.
Yeah, a privilege.
Based on what we discussed yesterday, is a person able to say, I'll eat when I'm done working?
No, he's only allowed to eat while he's working. Yeah.
How?
Sometimes
While he's
I would double the time.
no, he's chewing like gum.
He's eating it. One hand up, cucumber, eating, and he's on the field, and one hand to the way hard.
Well, it depends
It's
what
had
he's
a
doing.
lot more time.
Let's say he's walking a basket or something. While he's walking with this basket, he's allowed to put one in the basket, one in his
Why do you
mouth,
need
one
a
in the basket,
basket?
one in his mouth. That's how they collect things, Maybe he's putting it into the wagon or something. Yeah. So what does this have to do with the machlekes between Rabbi Elazar Chisma and the Chachamim? If we learn that kinafshecha means that he gets it because he risked his life, I guess the way it seems from Rashi is that according to Rabbi Elazar, the fact that you're able to eat, that's because of your salary. That's because you're risking your life. Therefore, the give you a little bit extra in the salary, give you this bonus. According to the Chachamim, it has nothing to do with that. It's a totally separate halacha. That there are certain situations where they can arrange where he's not allowed to eat.
Agrees with
Okay. Okay.
not allowed to.
Okay. Now, it's possible that this Gemara could be learned the other way. When it says Mar Savar, it doesn't necessarily mean that this one holds this and this one holds that. Mar Savar, you could flip it also. Yeah, you'd have to play with it a little bit. Okay. Tashima, come and listen. Nazir Shamar, let's say there was a Nazir that's doing work in a vineyard. Really should not be in a vineyard. This is not a place where a Nazir is supposed to be. They tell the Nazir you should not go into the vineyard. It's not a biblical law, but it's a rabbinic law that he should be avoiding the vineyard. So let's say a Nazir is doing work. Shamar, he says, he says, give the grapes. Because I can't eat the grapes because I'm a Nazir. So that special allowance, I want to give it to my wife and children. Say, ain't shayman like we don't allow him to do that. If that's if that's a bonus that he gets on his salary, so why can't he pass it on? So it's by right; he has the rights to it. It's like a monetary arrangement. It says Hassam. The Gemara answers that's because of a knas that we impose on him that he never should have taken that job. We say go. We tell to the Nazir, go around. You should not go near the vineyard. Don't even come close to the vineyard. Because he took that job, we don't want to supply him with extra benefits. And we don't want to be accommodating for him. He shouldn't have taken that job in the first place. Tashma, so come and listen. This seems to be a very clear halacha, exactly that would answer our question. Person is not allowed to say to give those benefits to his wife and children. That was our original question. That was the nafkamina between if it's coming from heaven or if it's a bonus on a salary. We say that he's not allowed to. If you say that it's a bonus on his salary, it's his own thing. Why don't we listen to him? You should be allowed to transfer it to them. It says my payal. Who are we talking about when you say a worker? Nazir. We're adding in that we missed out one detail from that brisa, and we're talking about a Nazir, and that's why we go back to that other answer that it's because of a penalty that we put on him. We're not going to accommodate, but he took a job he shouldn't have taken. The Gemara says Vatanya Nazir, but we have Vatanya Payal. But we have two brises. One says Nazir, one says Payal. Why do we need two brises? If they're both the same thing, why do we need two of them? The Gemara says Midi Gabi Adadi Tanyan. You think those were placed one together? They were taught separately. One said Nazir, one said Payal, but when it said Payal, it was actually referring to the Nazir. If it was put in the same book, so why do I need one case right after another Nazir and then another Nazir? Doesn't have to say that. Yeah. But because they were taught in different locations, so then when it said Payal, it was actually referring to a Nazir. You can't ask a question, well, why does it say it over there? Why do we need two of them? It wasn't taught together. Tashema, Minayan Lapaya, come and listen. How do we know that a worker Shamar Tunulish Tivane Shain Shaimali? How do you know that if he says, I'd like for my wife and children to be able to eat the fruits while I'm working instead of me? I'm not going to eat, but they're going to eat. How do we know I'm not allowed to do that? Shenemar, it says, you're not allowed to put it into your basket. And when you give it to your wife and children, that's like putting it into your own basket, putting it into your own lunchbox. You're not supposed to do that. You're allowed to eat, but you're not allowed to put it into your lunchbox and save it for later. So you're also not allowed to give it to your wife and children. Now, if you say that what you're really talking about over there is a nazir, when it says payil, it's referring to a worker, it's referring to a nazir, and that's why. And the reason why he's not allowed to pass it on is because of the penalty that we're putting on it, and we're not going to accommodate for the fact that he took that job. Is that the issue? The issue is he's not allowed to put it into his own lunchbox. It's because he's a nazir. That's the reason, and it's because he's a nazir. We don't want him to take the job. It's because the nazir, we say you should get out of the vineyard. It's not because he can't put it into his own box.
It's like a sakana, like it's
Yeah,
too tempting.
too tempting. Yeah, it's not called the sakana.
No.
It's called the Yetzirah.
It's all right.
Sakana is usually used for a physical danger. You can't do this because of sakana. This is it's a risk. Hashash. It's a risk.
I realized though a little while ago, I feel like now there's almost like Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Yeah.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be. Would a recovering alcoholic take a job in a as a
I don't think it'd be his best interest.
no, they wouldn't.
No, they see it.
Not only that, if you got a bartender or something like that, you drink all the time.
So they would not recommend a recovering alcoholic to be a bartender.
Find a better job.
Interesting. I thought maybe it should be the opposite. Maybe it should be because they tell the bartenders not to drink, right?
Oh, but that's what we do.
But so maybe the dafki get he's not allowed to drink and he's not allowed to drink. I don't know. Okay.
Take someone who has a desire for food, like working with food, to just food all the time, you take it and try it.
Uh-huh.
So like this one off, we talk about it.
Sorry.
This one off, we talk about it.
Yeah. Right. Well, and it's going to come back to the tithing. The tithing had to do with something else. Tithing had to do with at what stage of at what stage of production it was. So yeah, it is true that if you sell it even at an earlier stage, it's considered problematic. Sometimes maybe giving it to someone else would also be problematic. But we know right now we're avoiding that. Well, it's going to come up again very shortly, actually. So Gemara says, you're right. It should have used a different verse to tell us if he's a nazir that he should not be that he can't give it to his wife and kids. It's not because that he's not supposed to be putting it into his own lunchbox and he's only allowed to eat. That's not the real source. You're right. Because we called him a worker, so we used the pasuk of a worker. But the truth is that because it's really dealing with the nazir, so the pasuk is really a different pasuk. In other words, we're using the wrong source because of the language that we used when we were talking about him. But really, the real source is that it's a rabbinic penalty that they put on him that they're not going to accommodate him taking that job. Tashema, come and listen. Someone hires a worker, and what's he hired to do? To dry out the figs in the field. He's allowed to eat. So he doesn't have to take meiser because it's not the finished product. It's still drying. If you're eating fresh figs, then that is the finished product. But if you're going to dry them, then it's not the finished product. You still have to dry to be the finished product.
Oh, the issue is just if, like before he separates, it's fine.
Before he separates, it's fine unless it's the finished product where the obligation to separate already began. Then it's not fine. So here we're saying,
So, like, I'm sure you could have a finished product and not separate it.
No. Once you have a finished product, then there's an obligation to separate, and then you won't be allowed to eat anymore.
Or say, I want to separate it next week. Like,
No, but
how do
you
do it?
can't eat the tevel. You can't eat unfixed grain. So it has to be the stage in the middle where, like, for example, let's say he's picking grapes. What stage would the grapes be high when he brings them into the house? We had another stage. It's production. It's a finished product. There's just levels. There's what's ripe.
Okay.
That he's allowed to eat once it's ripe. But then there's the finished of the production. So when he takes them into the house, then he's going to be high.
But in this case, it's talking about what dates?
This is figs.
Figs. Okay.
So usually if he takes them into the house, he would be higher. But over here, because it's going to dry them, so the drying would be when they're dry.
You can still eat it when.
You could eat them when they're not dry. In the middle, it gets bad in between. But because it's in the middle of the production, it's not high and mice yet.
It would just taste bad.
Yeah.
Nobody would eat.
Yeah, or it's before it dried. Fresh and dry are good. In the middle, it's bad. He's eating when it's fresh and it's not the finished product. Well, let's see. He says, he says that I want my children also to eat. Or I want my son to eat with my with the arrangement. Now this is getting interesting because when he eats, so he's not eating because of a business arrangement. It's not considered a purchase. He's eating because the Torah allows him to eat. The Torah allows him to eat. He's exempt from Meiser. But when the son eats, he has to separate Meiser, because when the son eats, that's already a business arrangement. There's already a transaction there, and that's considered like a sale. And once it's sold, even before it's the finish, the end of the production, the chiyuv of Meiser kicks in. But if we say that it's really part of his salary, so what's the problem? If it's his salary, so let him and his son is allowed to eat at his table. Son's not someone different than him. So let him and Sonny, why all of a sudden he's chayiv and meiser? He's just eating from his father's salary. There's no sale there. It's not like he's now transferring it over to his son. No. When he's eating, he's working and eating. Very nice. So it's clear that there's no transaction here. But if his son, who's not working, comes in and eats, then that already looks like there was a transaction, that he's doing this work on behalf, that this should be sold to him. It's as if it's a sale. It looks like a sale, therefore we make him take Meiser. Tashima, come and listen. Someone hires a worker, last is to work with the trees that are in their fourth year. The first 3 years of the tree, you're not allowed to eat the fruits. They have to be burnt. The fourth year, the fruits are taken to Jerusalem and they're eaten in Jerusalem. Now you're allowed to redeem them as well, just like Meiser Sheni. It's a very almost the same halachas as Meiser Sheni. So he's not allowed to eat the fruits because those fruits are consecrated. They have to go to Jerusalem. And if the person didn't tell him what he's doing, if he didn't say that I'm hiring you to work with fruits of the fourth year, it says he has to redeem them and feed them. Yeah. I think you had a fifth if you redeem it yourself. So he has to redeem them, and then he has to allow the person to work. Allow the worker to eat. But if we say that it's allowance that the heaven gives, what's the obligation on the owner? The Torah allows him to eat, and if it's forbidden, then he doesn't. The Torah doesn't allow. Why are we putting this as an obligation on the owner to redeem them? It has nothing to do with the owner. If it's a bonus, That's part of his salary. And for whatever reason, he said, I didn't know I wasn't going to get that bonus. So then it's okay. The owner would have to redeem to make sure he gets that bonus. But if it's something that doesn't come from the owner, it's just from the Torah. So then, why does the owner have to redeem them? The Torah, the Eibishter never gave it to him. It says over there. It looks like it's a false transaction, mistaken transaction. So maybe he never would have taken the job. Okay. Ema Seifa, let's go further. We can try to bring a proof from the end. Nisparsu Agulav. Let's say what he was doing here was he's working with these figs. So let's say he hired him.
What's the
bottom line is that was he able to eat produce before it was separated if it wasn't prepared?
Yeah. Now what's happening is that they dry the figs and they press them together. But let's say it didn't hold and it fell apart, and you have to redo this pressing. So once it was pressed together, it's already chayiv and meiser. Now that it fell apart, so we have a worker here, he's not allowed to eat because it was chayiv and meiser. Because the finish, it was already finished, just fell apart. So niftachu chavi yosef. Let's say there were barrels that ended up getting open, and we hired a worker that he should reseal the barrels. Now they're not allowed to eat. Why? Because they're chayiv and meiser. But if he didn't tell them that this was already a finished product, he thinks it's the first time. He thinks that he's sealing the barrels the first time. He thinks that he's pressing these figs together the first time. So he didn't tell that to him. Person thinks he's going to be able to eat while he's working. Then Meiser Mechilam, the owner has to take Meiser and then he's and allow them to eat. The Amrit. If you say Mishal Shemayim Moichel, that he eats from heaven, my Meiser Mechilan, why do we taking Meiser and feeding them? No obligation on the owner to do this. This comes from the Torah. It comes from the Eibishter. So what obligation are we putting on the owner that he has to take Meiser to allow him to eat? If either the Torah allows it or not, there's no obligation on the owner if it's not the owner's responsibility. Maybe you'll say that no, because he was tricked into this. We can understand how this is possible with the figs that they separated. He didn't realize that this was done once. He thought that he was the first one to show up to do this, and he didn't know that it happened once. He doesn't know that it's chayv and ma'aseh. And if the barrels opened up and he's sealing the barrels, what do you mean mekachtos? That he didn't realize that he wouldn't be allowed to eat? 1 second. Made the yada dit b'lamaisi, he surely knows that it's already chayiv and ma'aser. It's chayiv and ma'aser already before it's in the barrel. It's chayiv and ma'aser. You have to separate the ma'aser even when it's in the vat, even when it's in the wine press. It's already chayiv and ma'aser.
You see, like most food, like in the supermarket, it's opened already. You assume that someone already ate it. It's like the same thing with this.
Yeah.
You're not letting someone separate the ma'aser if it's open, even if someone did.
Yeah, we're saying here that in the wine process, in the process of winemaking, so at an earlier stage of the winemaking, you're chayiv and ma'aser, even before it's put into the barrels. Once it's in the pit, because after they squish it and all the wine goes into the pit, you're chayiv and ma'aser from the pit, not from the barrels. You're chayiv and ma'aser. You have to separate it earlier. Now it's already in a barrel. It ferments in the barrel. So, but you have to separate it beforehand, before the barrel. So how does this guy show up? Think that he's going to be allowed to eat when he sees the guy that's sealing barrels. That's a chayiv and ma'aser already beforehand. He knows he's working with things that he's not allowed to eat.
Is that because it's prepared before?
Yeah. Yeah. And then they know the size of the pit. So Amar Rav Sheshes says, "Shenispatchu chavi Yosef lebar." Talking about over here, where when the barrels opened up and the wine spilled out, he has to reseal them. Talking about that all the wine spilled back into the pit. So now it's in the original pit. So he thinks that when he's gonna they would probably siphon it or something, had to get it into the barrels, or maybe they took a jug and poured it into the barrel. So however they did it, he thinks that it's the first time, it's brand new. He's going to be able to take sips while he's because it's still in the pit. So Vatanya, 1 second. Yayin mishiyered the bar. Once it goes into the pit, it's already chayiv. Gemara says no. Rabbi Akiva da Mashiach. Talking about, we're following the view of Rabbi Akiva that says that there's a certain froth that the foam that goes on the top of the on the wine. That's when it's chayiv and meiser. That's like a initial fermentation where it starts to foam a little bit. Okay. And he didn't see it, so he shows up over there. He thinks he can still drink because it didn't foam yet. It probably takes a few days for that to happen. So it says the Amrulay that they say to the owner, we did not know that it already foamed up. We thought that we were going to be able to drink this grape juice probably, and now you're telling us that we can't. So we would have taken a different job. We'll be allowed to drink. Let him say to them. Let the owner say. No, you should have known that I didn't tell you what process it was coming. You should have known that it foamed already. You should have at least thought that there's a possibility that maybe it foamed already and you won't be allowed to eat. Now you make me obligated because you didn't think of all the possibilities. Marianne says, it's talking about a place where the same person that draws the wine into the barrels, he's the one that removes the foam. So because he didn't see any foam, he thinks that it hasn't foamed yet. So he thinks that it's supposed to be him because he's supposed to be the one that does it, and that's why it's considered like he was fooled. Now that Rav Zid taught from the yeshiva of Rabbi Yoshia, Yayin mishir the bar v'yikve. Wine, when it goes into the pit and it foams. Rabbi Akiva Rabbi Akiva says when you drain the waste from the barrel, apparently the sediment would go to the bottom of the barrel. They would open up something on the bottom and let the sediment, I don't know if it's the sediment or the peels or pits and peels that would come out on the bottom. They would make a little spout on the bottom to drain it. And Rabbi Akiva says that's the finished product. You could even say you can say that the wine did not spill back into the pit. That was like a strange kimta that you had, that it opened up and it spilled back into the pit. And
to separate it. I'm not sure if it's ready, if it's in the pit or not. Separate it.
Right.
So that's why
they're not allowed to eat. And that's why the owner has to take meiser to allow them to eat again. With figs, it was clear. It was easier. With figs, it wasn't recognizable if this was the first time they were being pressed together, or if it was the second time. The first time they're pressed together, it's already chayv and meiser. But the guy thinks it's the first time, so therefore the owner has to take meiser. By the wine, we were trying to look for a case. How is it that the guy thinks that it's pater from meiser? The workers think it's pater from meiser. Really, it's chayv and meiser, and that he's claiming that. I was tricked into this job. I thought I was going to be able to drink. So therefore, the owner has to take meiser to allow him to drink. So we're looking for a case. So we were saying, well, maybe the wine fell back into the pit. So he thinks it's before the stage of meiser. So we said, 1 second, but it really, when it foams. So how does he know if it foamed? He said, well, he was the one that was supposed to remove the foam, and he didn't remove it. So he thinks it's not chayv and meiser. Now we say, 1 second, you don't have to come on to all those interesting cases. You have a much easier story. You have a case where it's in the barrel, and you didn't release the waste from it. And according to Rabbi Akiva, that it's not chayv and meiser until then. You don't have to say that the wine spilled out back into the pit. So I'm relay that they say to the owner, we didn't know that you already separated the waste. You should have thought that maybe, you're just sealing the top of the barrel. You should have thought that maybe I already took the waste out from the bottom. You took the job. How do you know what made you think that you're going to be able to drink? So the Gemara answers, Ba'asr, we're talking about a place, the Hu Sharik, Kahu Mashli, that the same person that seals the barrels, Sharik sounds like he, how do they translate Sharik? Just seals the barrels, or does it smooth something? Sharik sounds like slippery.
Plugs.
Plugs, okay.
Seals.
Seals. The word is not seals. The word is more like something slippery, but I guess it means he smooths off when they would use like a plaster or something, a wax or something to seal the barrel, whatever it was. So he would make the guy that seals the barrel. He's the one that also removes the waste. Since it wasn't him that did it, so he thinks that no one did it. So he thinks he should be still be allowed to drink from it. That's why it's considered mekach tais. Okay. Let's see if we can get through this next Gemara. The next Gemara has to do with it throws us back into like a gittin sugya about if a person is allowed to tell his slaves that I'm not that you have to work for me and I'm not feeding you. It has to do with also if children that are eating at the father's table, the father keeps their salaries. When they get a job, the father keeps the salary. Well, it goes like this. Tashma, come and listen. Now, al yidei means because for himself. A person can stipulate with the owner, with the employer, that I'm not going to eat, but instead I would like an increase of salary. And he could do the same thing. Al yidei b'nai ubitei hagdailam. If they're working, he's getting this job for his children. He can set it up with his children as well. My children aren't going to eat, but they're gonna get a higher salary. You can do the same thing for his adult servants and slaves, maid servants and slaves. Do the same thing. Same thing for his wife. This husband can make that arrangement. My wife is going to come work, and she's not going to eat, and she's going to get a higher salary. Because all of these people, the children, the slaves, his wife, all of them are intelligent and mental capacity, and they could be meichel on that rights. They could forgive the rights to eat, and in exchange they're going to get the increase of salary. But he can't make that arrangement for his children that are minors. He can't make that arrangement for his slaves that are minors, or for his animal, because they don't have the ability to forgive that right that they would like to eat while they're working. Kasal Kadaita, the Gemara initially thinks that who's responsible for feeding these youngsters? It's the father or the master. Now, if that's the case, then the salary goes to the master, to the father. And so this arrangement that he gets the salary, and the children aren't able to be Michael. Now, if you say that this is an allowance, why are the children allowed to eat? It's coming directly from heaven. The heaven allows them to eat. The father cannot step in and remove that and for an increase of salary. The father has no rights to that allowance from heaven. That's why he's not allowed to. It makes sense. But if we say that it's part of the arrangement of the salary, it's a bonus to the salary. So why can the father not step in? Why can the master not step in and say, instead of the bonus, like you can probably do with his insurance, is I don't need your insurance. I have some other thing. So I would like that in monetary or something. You can do the same thing with that extra bonus of eating. Why can't he not step in and do that? If he's getting their salary, that's their assumption. Why can't he take the bonus? What's the difference? Where it says, we're talking about where the father is not supporting the children, and therefore they're keeping their own salary. Hachi gedolim nami. If that's the case, then why was he allowed? Why was he allowed to do it for the adults? He says no. Gedolim yadi v'kamachli. It wasn't that he was allowed to do it. They're agreeing to this stipulation because they're adults. They're allowed to agree. It's not that he's doing it on his own. They're actually agreeing to it. But one second, we have a brisa from Rabbi Ishia that says the same thing, just with one difference. It says the person is allowed to make this stipulation that he's not going to eat, but he's going to get a higher salary for himself. And the same thing for his wife. But he can't do it for his animal. Say that my animals aren't going to eat. But he can do it for his adult children. He can't do it for his young minor children, children that are minors. So far, it's exactly the same. But he's allowed to do it for his slaves, whether they're young or old. Now here, there's a slight nuance here, because here it says that when the slaves are older, he's not allowed to do it. He's allowed to do it for his older slaves. He's allowed to do it for his older slaves and for the younger slaves. The difference here is the younger slaves, he's allowed to do it. With the first price that we had, he wasn't allowed to do that for his younger slaves. My love, must be. Both cases are talking about where he's supporting he's supporting his children, he's supporting the slaves and everything, and therefore the salary belongs to him. And this is the machlekes between these two brises, Rav Hishia's brisa and the first brisa. The Mar Savar Mishalayowech. First brisa holds. That's actually a mishnah, and that's not a brisa. There's a mishnah and a brisa. The mishnah is coming up on the next page. The first what I'm calling the brisa, the first brisa, is actually a mishnah. The mishnah on the next page, that's talking about Mar Savar Mishalayowechel. That's talking about where the allowance to eat while you work is coming from, is made up by the employer. In other words, it belongs to the worker. Marsav Mishal Shemayim Moechel. And the Brisa, Rav Hishia, he says that it comes from heaven, and that's why. What does that switch over here? Let me take a look at your. Holds that the worker partakes of his own, whereas the other master, the Tan of the Mishnah, I said exactly that. They're learning it like this. The Mishnah and the Brisa argue about the following point. Mar Savar, the master, the Tan of the Brisa, that's the second one, holds that a worker partakes of his own. And that's why if it's adult or minor slaves, then he's allowed to make that stipulation, because that was just an arrangement. Whereas the other master, the Tana of the Mishnah, holds that a worker partakes of heaven, and that's why if it was a minor, he wouldn't be allowed to make that arrangement. Now, 1 second. Over here it says. The Brisa says that he has the jurisdiction over the supplemental wages of the minor slaves, just like over their base wages. The Gemara is going to ask in a moment why you can't do it about the children. The Mishnah is from heaven, and that's why he has no jurisdiction over his minor slaves eating entitlement. It's not a wage that accrues automatically. Okay. Now the Gemara says, let me hold this over here. The Gemara says, Loi, it's not the case. The Kuliam Mishlayoichel. Everyone says that this is an arrangement that he eats from the owner. Kan b'shein malam mezainas, u'braisa malam mezainas. The difference is in the Mishnah, he's not providing them with the basic need, with the basic support, and that's why he has no rights to their earnings. But in the Brisa, he has the rights to their earnings because he's providing them. But Brisa v'maylam mezainas. Let's leave it over here. Would like to get to the Mishnah. We'll have to figure it out how to go back over this on Sunday. Okay.
Before you mentioned about this that the master told him, okay, you work me
Have a good Shabbos.
Have a good Shabbos.
so make your money for your food. In that case, whatever money